let me just read a quote here from Bryant. This is the Gun Violence Archive guy, and he says, and while that very small study by Gary Kleck has been debunked repeatedly, first off, he has an even more sort of bombastic thing to begin with. He says that 2.5 million number needs to be killed, buried, dug up, killed again, and buried again. It is highly misleading, is used out of context, and I honestly believe it has zero value, even as an outlier point in honest DGU discussions, defensive gun use discussions. And while that very small study by Gary Kleck has been debunked repeatedly by everyone from all sides of the issue, even Kleck. By the way, of course, Kleck himself stood by his research when I talked to him, and does not feel it has been debunked by either himself or other people. He feels quite the opposite way. But anyway, going back to Bryant's point here, it still remains canon by gun rights folks and their supporting politicians, and is used as a blunt instrument against gun safety regulations every time there is a state or federal level hearing. Put simply, in the time that study has been published as a, quote, CDC study, gun violence prevention policy has ground to a halt, in no small part because of the misinformation that small study provided. So, this was in an email that Bryant sent to CDC officials after they had their private meeting back last September, and he's making his motivations extremely clear to them, and they don't object to it. And in fact, despite initially saying there was no reason to change this description on their website, they did exactly that, and thanked these advocates for their input. So, and said that they were explicitly told the advocates they were addressing their concerns. So, that I think is where it really puts things over the top. It wasn't just, okay, these people are gun control advocates. They generally want stricter gun laws. They've said that publicly numerous times. Poe Murray is obviously one of the most bombastic gun control advocates that in the community. But they also were very clear about why they wanted to change these numbers, or why they wanted them removed from the website.
Yeah, one of the more striking parts of the exchange, I thought, was when the folks at the CDC initially say, no, it's all we do is we say there's a very wide range of them. We explain why there's a wide range. We point people to more reading material. This is fine. And the original language was fine. It's really striking that they, saw it with that kind of clarity to begin with, and then later caved.
Yeah, one of the CDC officials, James Mercy, expressed confusion about why they would change it. First he expressed surprise that Mark Bryant was connected to Newtown Action Alliance, because Mark Bryant is generally puts himself forward as more of a researcher than an activist, but whereas Newtown Action Alliance, again, is one of the most bombastic groups out there. And after that, he said, why would we change it? We don't say anything that's incorrect or controversial, basically. And he asked, is there some other reason we would change this? He's like not understanding what the problem would be. And then nobody answers his questions in the email thread that was released, at least. In fact, there isn't any internal deliberations where people argue for the change in the emails that I could find. You just have the public statements that they made after the fact. Yeah,
I'm not an expert on FOIA law, but I wonder if those kinds of internal deliberations are something that they don't have to disclose, and that's why I wasn't in there. I feel like it had
they disclosed the internal deliberations where they're saying we shouldn't change it. So I don't know. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Obviously they did talk about speaking offline on this subject. We obviously don't know what they said in person to each other, or even in that meeting that they had with the advocates. We don't know if there was any further intervention from the White House than what's seen in the emails. We don't know those sorts of details because they're not written documents that you can FOIA. So we don't have a complete picture. We have a pretty good picture, pretty extensive picture of what happened, but it's not perfect. But yeah, They were there were actually several times internally where they said, why would we change this? We stand, in fact, initially the first internal discussion of it said, we stand behind what's on the website, unambiguously, and cited 12 different surveys on defensive gun uses that are, I believe, are included in the review that they linked. So, yeah, I mean, it's just the blatantly political nature of at least part of the argument that the advocates were making, I think adds a level of concern for a lot of people to this whole situation.